John is a man of focus, commitment, sheer will. Something you know very little about.
David, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Look, man, we are here to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of one of the greatest film franchises in history, John Wick. Look, we have 4 movies, a TV show, and a spin-off movie coming next year. When the first John Wick movie was being made, how much of the future or ending did you already have in mind?
Oh, I don't think we saw it as a franchise when we first got it. I think we were really just excited to get a chance to sit in the director chair. You know, we had been journeyman stunt performers, stunt coordinators, fight choreographers, and then action, second unit directors for years. And it was just great to now finally have a movie that we call our own. And so, we laid it all on the line. It was a small budget and a short schedule. And we used our, 20 plus years of knowledge of making movies and put it all in there. And now we luckily resonated with people, and we've built a world that, people want to continue to come see.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite film franchises, and that world is absolutely incredible. Now, what's your fondest memory looking back on where John Wick began?
It's my fondest memory. Well, it was the movie was a challenge. I'm not going to lie. I think, we were coming off shooting big second units. We had budgets of, 3 times the size of the entire Wick movie. We were shooting Marvel movies and had, longer schedules in our second unit than we did in our first unit on John Wick. But I think, really the fond memories come from maybe shooting there's so many fond memories, but I think one of them comes shooting that fight scene in the house, the first home invasion scene. I just felt like that was going to be a special moment. It was a time when we got to do some choreography that we've been baking for years, and we had presented to other directors and they weren't really interested in. And so it was really the first time we got to play with that stuff. And I was watching it, be preserved on digital media as we were shooting it. And we got really excited, and we were like, here we go. This is it. This is the essence of the action style. So
incredible. Well, on the flip side, you touched on this a little bit, but on the flip side, what was your least fond memory and biggest challenge in crafting the first John Wick film?
I think budget and time more than budget. Budget was hard, but time, we were constantly rushing. And I think, but all those constraints made it, we had to make choices.
Sure.
And sometimes, great genius comes out of the constraints. Look at Jaws, or, look at all these sort of beginning movies of filmmakers. They didn't have a lot of resources, and then they got to do something that was inspired. And I think that as challenging as it was, it provided us that opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, John Wick's name is now up there with other characters like Jason Bourne, Jack Bauer, and James Bond. What does that mean to you? And what is the origin behind the name John Wick? And how did this become the title instead of the original title? I guess it was called Scorn.
Well, the John Wick was in the script, so that was where the name came from. I don't know how we ended up changing the title, or if that was already Scorn was the original draft, and then by the time we got it, Wick was on there. I'm not sure about all the timelines of all that.
Sure.
But back to your original question, yeah, it's mind-blowing that, we've sort of, that little film blew up, and we had created something that had resonated with genre fans so strongly. I mean, having been genre fans ourselves for so long, I think we knew what the audience wanted. Which is why we were surprised when we had a distributor screening, 2 months before Fantastic Fest, and nobody bought it. Not one company bought the film.
What?
Lionsgate had international because they sold international, but they didn't have domestic because they didn't want it. It was just this film that was financed through a Lionsgate International. And again, everybody in town, every studio in town saw it, and they passed. And we showed it at Fantastic Fest. Lionsgate on a lark said, okay, let's just see what we got here. And it blew the, roof off. And they're like, holy shit, we have this movie we didn't realize that everyone would love. And then immediately they bought domestic and they moved it to October release. And like, it was all happening. It happened in like 6 weeks. And
that's incredible.
Yeah. So there was a moment there where we were like, we gave it our best shot. I guess it's going straight to radio. Like no one's going to ever look, And it wasn't until that audience in Fantastic Fest sort of validated what we'd hoped, is that we're genre fans, you're genre fans, you're going to get it. And they got it.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that first film, I was blown away. I was like, this is absolutely incredible. Now, are there any characters from the first movie that you wish you could bring back or regret killing off or tried to bring back but couldn't make work?
I mean, I like them all so much, but they've all sort of served their purpose in the story. And I think when you're telling a story, you have to pull at the heartstrings or you need emotional catharsis. And I don't have any regrets. It's like that first movie is so elegant in its execution, and everyone came and delivered what they needed to deliver, that it is what it is. I mean, of course I'd love to work with Willem any day of the week, but it was beautiful what he did, and so we needed it. The story needed it.
Absolutely. Now, John Wick has become a modern masterclass in realistic shootouts with regards to the exact number of bullets in a magazine. So how difficult was that to get right in the first film, and how much did it mean to you to get that right?
It was important to us. I mean, maybe more important to Chad, I think, and this is no dig. It's like, we all had different sensibilities. We'd been directing action together for a long time, but I think he was really specific about some of the gun choreography that he loved, and wanted this sort of authenticity with the sort of the gun fetish stuff. And that was cool. And I think that's amazing, because it added sort of another layer to the choreography. We were, great choreography comes from giving yourself problems. Sure. Like you want to create a fight scene that's compelling. Now put him on ice, or put him in the rain, or put him count the bullets, like give your choreography team the problems to solve, and you'll find such great, interesting moments. And that was just another sort of dimension to put into the choreography.
I love that philosophy behind it. I would have never thought of it that way. Now, watching the lore expand with the sequel movies has been really interesting, but what were some of the original ground rules for the Assassin's Guild, like the Continental and all that? How much is a gold coin actually worth?
Well, I think we kept it vague. And like what was great about Derek's script, there was an elegant minimalism to it, and all these great genre sort of sprinklings. And I don't even know if Derek we were inspired by. And so we started to like create a mythology in our minds, because we're such sort of, anime fans and graphic novel fans. And so we kept seeing it as a myth, a modern myth, and almost like a fairy tale, right? With John Wick, this underworld. I think it might have been more literal in Derek's mind, maybe not.
Sure.
But we tried to keep it gray so we could go somewhere. And we also felt like it was fun that there was sort of, you didn't know all of it. You knew hints of this underworld, but you didn't understand all of it. And unknowingly, that obviously set up the sequels in a really great way. It's like, no, we loved that part of John Wick. They're like, oh, you did. They really loved this sort of underworld hiding in plain sight that we wanted to create. And Chad has just done such an incredible job of like shepherding all of that in such an expansive way moving forward, and like giving fans what they want in that world building.
Look, you were one of my favorite directors. I loved Bullet Train. I was a huge fan of Fall Guy. If you could go back and give yourself advice before working on John Wick, what would it be?
Oh, hindsight's 2020. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying we were perfect, but I think that our imperfections made it the movie that it is. I think, there's a lot to learn. Like we didn't, there's a good story. Like, we didn't, when you're an action director, you don't get to post the movie. You deliver all your action scenes to the main director, right? And so, you're working with them to shoot the things that they want, and then you give it to them. So this was really the first time we had to be in the edit room and be in post for so long. And like, you watch a movie over and over and over, and it's a skill to learn how to watch something over and over and detach and like look at it critically. And I think, I guess one thing I might say is that I'm a maximalist, obviously, when you look at Fall Guy and you look at Bullet Train, but sometimes less is more. And I think we learned that in the editorial suite in Wick. We kept like, our editor, Elizabeth Ronald's daughter, was amazing. She kept distilling the movie. You need less, just a little bit less. This movie's visual. You're going to do some nice, elegant visual storytelling. You don't need that line of dialogue. You don't need this. This can work with a look. And all of that was a great learning process for the future.
It's awesome. Now, John Wick movies raised the bar again for action genre and have been hugely influential. How do you feel about the movie franchise impact on the genre and industry as a whole?
Oh, I feel so proud. I think, we finally, we got to do something that was really provocative, and we got to explore some ideas in sort of the action design space that we hadn't been able to explore with other directors. And then to watch where Chad has taken it. Chad is a brilliant choreographer and an action designer, and he has such a brilliant mind for action. It's really beautiful to see what he's done with the sequences in the sequels. And as much as we've worked together in the past, as co-directors or co-stunt coordinators or co-choreographers, it's beautiful to see him just like step it up and bring his A game to these things and raise the bar every time. They're really incredible films.
Absolutely incredible films. Now, how has Keanu Reeves' approach to the character changed over the past decade?
I think Keanu always approaches the character with discipline, and I can't speak from being on set for those sequels because I've been really in the background, but the knowing Keanu and from my experience, I'm sure the approach is the same. It's like this sort of like brutal discipline of training and finding the character physically and examining the script and like finding these, important moments to amplify and like being a collaborator from soup to nuts.
Absolutely. Now, looking back on the past 10 years, what's the craziest or coolest or best stunt or fight sequence from the franchise? And what's the thing that you believe you couldn't believe you pulled off?
Well, again, like in terms of the sequels, I have to give it all to Chad because those are all his things and his creations. And I can sit as an admirer of stunts and a stunt designer myself. And a former stunt performer, and I can say that stairfall in Wick 4 is a work of art, and it's just one of the most impressive feats of physical stunt performance that I've seen, and
I would agree with you.
So I think it's the conceit of it I think probably goes to Chad, and then the execution of it goes to the performer who did it, and I think it's awesome. It's such a celebration of like what we do, and like just to not cut away and then watch it happen in front of your eyes and know that it's all real is amazing.
Now, from the first film, are there any that you attempted, stunts that you attempted that you couldn't pull off or you didn't pull off? They were just too much?
No, I think we were trying to always like push the box out. It was such a confined box and such a small schedule and little resources. We were like pushing to get every piece of action in there we could. And a lot of it when you have little resources, you rely on fight scenes because they are inexpensive, you know.
Now, animals. Oh, go ahead.
No, but we had a piece of car action today in there, you know, where we were a little bit of car action at the docks, and like we, you know, created some cool camera mounts for Keanu to actually be driving. And then we had the moment of like dumping the SUVs off into the dry dock. And all of that stuff was like things that they said, you know, you can't afford, you're not going to be able to afford it. You know, we had to like really count our pennies and sacrifice a day or two of budget to like get those things in the movie, knowing what an action fans would want. You know, we had to fight for that stuff. And normally that size movie, you wouldn't have been able to do it. And if we didn't have the experience of like being stunt coordinators our own self, we probably wouldn't have got it.
That's crazy. It's so crazy. Now, animals have been a part of the story and the motivation throughout the series. Can you talk about the motivation that goes into the animal action sequences in the films? Like, you know, dogs were in the third one. We had horses in two. Can you talk about that for a second?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to the challenge. Like, we like that, you know, I like to present myself as a choreographer, and I know Chad does. It's like, you know, what's the next level? What's the difficult thing? What's the thing that's going to amplify this scene? And there's nothing more challenging and rewarding, and is adding animals. You know, it really is. Like, you know, we have a dog in Fall Guy, and like they take direction, but they're not speaking your language. You know,
right?
So you got to put in the time and the training, and you know, the thing that Chad did with the dogs in 2, I think, is it 2 or 3?
3, I believe.
3. You know, they spent months and months and months and months training. So again, like, it's challenging yourself to raise the bar, and I think that's what the series really does.
Now that we've had 10 years and things are about to expand with the ballerina and other projects in development, what do you want to see in the next 10 years of what John Wick looks like?
Oh, I just think that there's, you know, a world rich of stories, and I think, you know, it can go a lot of different ways. And I would, and I'd hope to see a little bit. I'd hope to see more of Keanu.
I mean, I was going to ask about that because there's so much interest in seeing Keanu back as John Wick for a 5th film. Do you have any regrets over how the ending of 4 with his apparent death was? And there's a funny fan theory out there, which I wanted to get your opinion on, that the IP could lean supernatural and have John Wick fighting out of hell. Is that way too much?
I don't know, because I'm so far removed from the creative now. It seems a little far-fetched to me. But I would never say never with the you know, with Chad and Basil and Keanu are making those decisions now, you know.
Absolutely. Now,
but I'm so game to see him back, and like, I'm sure there's a beautiful Unforgiven version of this movie too, where he's put the guns back on one last time or whatever. Like, it, as an audience member on 4, like, I loved it. And as my friend one of my best friends directed the movie, Chad, you know, I'm such a huge fan of it. I think they made the right choice. And like, yeah, you can it's movies. And if people want to go back and tell more stories in that, we'll find a way to make the story happen.
Now, David, I want you to put your fandom hat on for a second, because how has it felt watching the franchise grow with Chad while you also went on to grow with everything from Deadpool 2 to Bullet Train to The Fall Guy?
Amazing. It's so great to see, you know, something that we started together and, you know, blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen. And like, you know, we were there to support each other on our first directorial experience. And like, and then to see that thing grow and prosper and never stop, it's been amazing. And I couldn't be happier and prouder of the whole franchise. I love it.
Same, me too. Now, which set piece left you stunned the most and keen to try on your own hand at it?
It's done some great. I don't have a horse scene in my pantheon of stunts As a first unit director, I've done a bunch of second unit directing where we've had great horse scenes, and I remember this horse scene. There was a carriage chase in the Conan movie with Jason Momoa's first starring role that I shot. But I thought the horse work in John Wick was really fun, and to pull it off in the city and all of that was pretty amazing.
Now, the last question I have for you is, with multiple spin-offs in various states of development, have you ever thought about coming back and directing another John Wick movie?
I say never. Like, I'm such a fan of that character, and I love, I love John so much, and I love working with Keanu, and it'd be awesome. But I don't think about it often, but if I did, of course, yes, it was the right story and I'm the right person to tell it. Sure.
Incredible. Look, David, like I said, man, you're one of my favorite directors. It's always fun talking to you. Thank you for your insight and knowledge into John Wick, especially as we celebrate its 10-year anniversary. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks for celebrating it. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a great day, David. Pleasure.
Right. See ya. Bye.
People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.